unreached. And I know that the video that was shown right before Joe's story spoke talked about the unreached. And Natalie was going over the statistics here, and this one with the red dots breaks my heart. And the reason is that these are people groups. These are not people. These are unreached people groups in the red dots. And the video that was shown before Joe spoke talked about what an unreached person was. And that's an unreached person. I just want to reiterate this because I want to make sure that we understand that someone who's unreached is not going to go into a Walmart and buy a Bible. Someone who's in an unreached area is not going to be tuning the radio necessarily and run into, gospel music. They're not going to go into a hotel and open a drawer and see a Bible sitting there. In the unreached areas, in many of them, it's totally illegal to even mention the name Jesus. And so if you're in the village out somewhere and you have no idea who Jesus is and you have no way of knowing who Jesus is, you're unreached. There are people who can go their entire lives that are born, live, go to school, work, and die, and never hear the name Jesus. And as John pointed out earlier, these are not people who've heard the gospel and said, I don't want it. These are people who've never had the opportunity to say, hey, would I want it or would I not want it? And one of the fun things about working at Jesus for Asia is that we get to meet people when we can travel. And then we get to hear stories about people who come and meet Jesus and say, yes, I want that. Hannah and I were talking yesterday when we were preparing for our Faith Club presentation this morning, that people are so hungry that when they meet Jesus, they're like, yes, I want that. We hear that in our Bible worker stories and our evening school stories. People go, wow, I like your God. I like that. I want that. So we have a world of people who would definitely accept Jesus if they would hear, but they don't hear because nobody goes. And that breaks my heart. These red dots break my heart. And the other thing that breaks my heart is how many people can go to bed every night and be okay that there are all these red dots here and say, that's okay. It's okay that they don't know Jesus. That also breaks my heart. But on a fun topic, let's shift to fun. I'm going to be telling stories from our evening schools because that's what I was assigned. Normally I get to talk about Bible workers, but Hannah's going to be covering that topic tomorrow. And so I'm going to get to share with you about evening schools. And since many of you are not familiar, I forgot, we have to do one more. Let's see. I don't know that you can see this statistic because I can't see it. Very easy. John brought this up earlier, but the percentage of unreached people is 42.5%. And I took that off the joshuaproject.net website on Sunday. So 42.5% of the world has never heard the name of Jesus. That would be like you having 5 children and 4 of them never hearing about Jesus, and that you were okay with that. And you're like, oh, that's quite all right. I'll just go with this one. I'm good. The other 4 of my kids, don't worry about that. Or maybe 2, it's 40%. But these are Jesus' kids represented there. And so I want you to get excited, number one, about the fact, as Joe's story said a little bit ago, that the Holy Spirit is moving. And I want you to get excited about the fact that even in the time of lockdown, in 2020 and 2021, God was moving. But I also want you to be able to begin to have a burden for those who have no opportunity to hear the gospel, and to ask God what he would like you to do about that. Because as John Piper said in the video, we were all made for mission in one form or another. And that's when we are at our best function, is when we're doing missions. So in Matthew 19:14, Jesus made this statement: "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven." Children were very important to Jesus when he was here on earth, because they love, and they throw their whole selves into it, and they don't analyze. And if someone says something to them that this is going to happen, or this is true, or that's true, they believe it, and they move on. Like we were talking about faith earlier today. They have that childlike faith. And we have found, Jesus for Asia has found, that helping children opens doors into families and into villages and into larger communities. And their hearts are so precious. And we love the evening schools. So this is a picture of one of the evening schools. I think that looks like Cottitor from the coloring. But they come in and they sit down on the floor because they don't have desks and chairs. They can't afford them, but then really with all the numbers of them, they wouldn't have room. So they get to sit on the floor. We can pack more children in that way. So how did it get started? Well, back in 2005, 2006, somewhere along there, our director for India, Israel Prasad, went to the village of Chembrambakam, and he saw kids everywhere. Have you ever been to an area where kids are just coming out of the woodwork and out onto the streets? And that's what he saw. He saw children who were running around the streets. Many of them came from really bad backgrounds, and many of them had fathers who didn't work really, but they still ran the household, and when they got any kind of money into the house, the father would drink it, and then there would be no money left for the family to eat or to pay rent or anything like that. And so the kids were running wild, and God put a burden in Israel's heart to do something for these children. He had prayed about the children, and God used Israel to answer that prayer. And so he was trying to figure out how he was going to ask John, could we start an evening school? And so he prayed about asking John, and God was already working on John's heart. And Israel finally connected with John on the phone and told him what he wanted, and John's like, wow, that's what God told me too. So they knew that was their confirmation that the evening schools were going to start. So the evening schools started one in Chembrambakam, and the first school had about 40 children. And going to school for the children in poor villages is difficult. Some children cannot work because they cannot go to school because they have to work. Some can't go to school because of the caste that they're in, and nobody wants them around, and they think that they're worthless, so why train them? And then others can go to school, and the teacher may or may not show up, or if the teacher shows up, the teacher may or may not teach anything, and then the kids don't learn either. There are some schools that where the kids can go to school and get a good education, but those are usually the higher caste schools. And so it's important to train these children and give them something to do and to use their minds, because they're bright, but they just haven't been given a chance. And so Israel tells the story of this first evening school, that the children were so excited to have something to do, and they would bring them in and they would teach them songs and help them with school and show them Bible verses and give them food, and everything was going really well until the enemy of souls said, oh, no, we can't have this. So the enemy of souls stirred up the villagers. And the villagers came storming into the evening school with weapons and said, "You're going to stop this." And we've seen so many times where with our Bible workers that, the enemy can come, but they don't go anywhere. Angels start protecting. So these men were just ready to tear this school apart and told them, "No, you need to stop this." But they didn't do anything. They just turned around and left mysteriously, just walked away. So they kept going with the school, but Satan wasn't done. So Satan stirred up those men again and brought them back. But this time, the parents of the students formed a wall between the men and the school. And the parents said, "You're not doing anything to this school. These are the only people helping our kids. And you back off and go away." And so they did. So God protects these evening schools. He finds them very, 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 very precious to them. So do I have that's what I did. There are evening schools. So in the program, they have about 2 hours, 2.5 hours every night. And the students get opportunity to have tutoring for their government schools, or worldly schools, as Israel calls it. And it's either first time learning altogether, or it's tutoring, so that they go to school, they don't understand quite what's going on, and so they can come to the evening school and get help. And then once they've done that, they have time to learn about Jesus, and they learn Bible verses, and they sing songs, and they recite stories, and it's a whole lot of fun. And then they're fed a meal. And for many of the kids, that's either their first meal of the day or their second, if they were lucky enough to have breakfast. And they go from Sunday through Friday evenings. And on Friday evenings, they have what's called talent night. So they don't do the worldly education that night. It's all about Bible and then the meal. But what they do is they stand up and give testimonies as to what God did for them that week. And they recite their Bible verses, and then they sing their songs for each other. And, this is what I learned. And we've heard stories of kids who give their testimony of, "I lost my pencil, and I prayed to Jesus, and he found my pencil for me." And those are fun because, number one, they don't know who Jesus is most of the time when they come to school. And then they hear about this amazing God, and then they learn about how to pray to him, and they go to him with everything. Now, we may think a pencil's not that big of a deal, but for these poor children, having a pencil is like having a laptop computer. It's that important to them. And the fact that Jesus helped them find their pencil just meant the world to them. And they were so excited. And then other kids get excited and go, "Wow, if Jesus can do that, what can he do for me?" So it's an awful lot of fun. Oh, I keep doing that because I've got the thing wrong. So right now, we have 19 evening schools. We have 9 in Udamalpet, which is in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, and then 1 in Tanjavur, which is also in Tamil Nadu. And then we have 10 in E-Road. Now, we were going to have an E-Road mission trip kind of reunion, because we have several people here who went to E-Road in early 2020. Carrie went, and Brian Job went, and Joe Story went, and Hannah went. And who else is here that went? Oh, you, John. Oh, Jason went. That's right, Jason. Sorry, Jason, I didn't see you back there. And so we decided that, not we, John wanted to go. No, that's not how it started. In E-Road. I'll get there. I'm going to get to E-Road. I have to read my slides and not my notes, so I'm putting my notes over there because I'm messing myself up. I wanted to show you what an evening school looks like. And this is an evening school in Pukulam, and it's just a plain box. It's just a box. Cinder box. Huh? Yeah, they're in churches. So this is actually church. And they meet on Sabbath, but it's not a fancy school. It's just a cinder box, but they love it. And they love going there. And they hang streamers. I love the streamers that they hang from the ceiling, all different colors. It's serious. And so that's an awful lot of fun in there. But that's kind of what one looks like. This is the evening school in Pukulam. I was able to take that picture. And so E-Road, this is where I was. I forgot I had stuck in the Pukulam. So when the Jesus for Asia team went to India in 2019, and we toured around in different places because we were getting Bible worker stories and evening school stories, and we were meeting different leaders that work with our Bible workers, and we went to E-Road. And the director there in E-Road, Pastor Appasamy, was like, would you come and do an evangelistic series here in E-Road? We would really like to have that. Many of the churches are dying, and we would love to do that. And of course, we're like, absolutely, we'd be happy to do that. And it took a year. It took us a year to pull this all together, and we have several members who went. And we went to 10 churches, and we did an evangelistic series, and in the end, we had 23 baptisms at the end of our week. But we wanted to figure out a way to connect what we did as an evangelistic series with the community long term. Like, we can fly in there as Westerners, and we can do the series and preach the gospel, and then we leave, and what happens after we leave? So we thought, wow, what if we could establish evening schools in these churches? Because that way the churches will continue to work in the communities. And John, poor John was like, I don't know that we can sustain 10 more evening schools. And we're like, yes, we can. We can do this. And it was the finances. Could we do this? So we took a step of faith and said, yes, we're going to do this. And so we were all getting ready. Veronica helped put together a whole campaign for starting these evening schools. And how much did we have when we left? We had enough to get them all started. Yeah, so it cost about $400 or something to get them started, because we have to make sure that the place has electricity, and have to hire a cook and a teacher and all that. And we had the money when we left to be able to start them all. We were so excited. And so we were so glad that we took that leap of faith. So that's how we have 19 evening schools now instead of 9. And so this is a picture of a church that John preached at in 2019. We were visiting different churches. And this is a church where it looks, I think that's the one where there was no advance warning. We just showed up, and people saw the lights on, and they're like, something's happening at the church. And so all the villagers, they all came in. And so that was the picture from there. And you can see the streamers right up there that they decorate their church with. It's always a lot of fun. So then we came back, and some of us got COVID while we were over there, and then COVID came, and everything came to a screeching halt. After we had taken the leap of faith to have the Evangelistum series, and we got the evening schools up and running, and then COVID hit. And we were all disappointed because everything went into lockdown. And we were like, oh, the evening schools, what are they doing? But I have to tell you that our brothers and sisters in India, and Hannah's going to talk about the Bible workers tomorrow, COVID did not stop them. They kept moving forward. And it was really great to see that they did that, because let me see what this next one is. Yeah. So here are the meals. I don't know that you can see that very well, but this is an open fire and a big old pan on the open fire, and that's where they cook their meal. And then this is the kids sitting and eating their meal. This is pictures from Amaravati, and I so wish I could tell you the whole story of Amaravati, but I'm not able to do that today. But this is one of my favorite places on the planet, and it's the poorest place I've ever seen in my life. But the people there are really precious. But I wanted you to see how they eat. It's not fancy, but they're so thankful for it. So I want to start telling you some stories about, I have to find Kumar. Sorry for breathing into this. I'm going to move this down a little bit. There we go. So during COVID, we were able, by God's grace and by the generosity of our donors, to be able to send the money over to the evening schools every month. And the evening schools were allowed to open long enough to feed the children. Everything was locked down, but because it was a humanitarian act, they were able to open and feed the kids. And they ended up feeding more than just the children that were there, attending on a regular basis. They were really sustaining many of the villages. They weren't allowed to stay open long enough to do any tutoring, but while the kids were eating, they would sing songs and teach them, Bible stories, and they tried to keep the spiritual aspect of it going while the children were eating, because they were on a time limit, and they came in and the kids were fed. And so the stories I want to share with you are from the time period of COVID. We have tons of stories, but we wanted to share with you the faith about what the schools did during COVID, that they had faith that God was moving. And there were many instances where these schools were the only thing keeping children from starving. And these schools, and the fact that it was Christians running the schools, blew the minds of the Hindus. Many times Israel heard from families that they would go to their temples and ask for help, and no one would help them. Their gods were not helping them. The priests were not helping them. The only people who were helping them were the evening schools. And the people noticed that. And they wanted to know who were these people that were doing this in the middle of COVID. It made no sense to them, but they were very thankful for it. So I want to tell you the story about Kumar. Kumar is a fifth grader, and he has an older brother who had stopped going to school, but his mom wanted him to have something to do during the lockdown. And so even though they weren't Christians, they wanted their son to have a meal and do something. And so he would come every night, and as I just mentioned, his parents were blown away because Kumar's not a Christian. And yet he was able to walk into this church and get fed. And nobody said to him, well, I'm sorry you can't be here. You're not of the right religion. They didn't even ask the question. They were just like, come on in, sit down, listen, and, eat and be happy. They didn't ask them any other questions. And the mother said, the mother came to the teacher and said, I have heard about Jesus. And I know a little about him, kind of like we may know a little bit about Buddha or, something like that. And she said, from what I've heard, you are the only people I have ever seen who actually live like Jesus lived. You're the only ones who are actually sharing the way Jesus would share. And so she knew enough, and it touched her heart. And we get these stories month by month. So Some I know the ending to, some I don't. But it would be wonderful if you prayed for Kumar and his family, because they have now seen people who reflect Jesus, and they want to know more about who he is. This is a brothers, Selva and Vijay. Wow, they were wild kids. They were really wild kids. And when the lockdown came, they were stir crazy. They did not know what to do. So the mom had heard that there was this evening school that was feeding the kids, and they needed something to do, and the mom was like, please go. I've had you all day. Go to the evening school. So the brothers would go, and they would eat, and then they would sing and hear about Jesus and learn about the Bible. And the parents began to notice changes in their wild boys. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. And the boys were changing as they were learning about Jesus, and as they were hearing about how we're supposed to live and how we're supposed to love. And the parents came and said, what are you doing? Like, the boys are now so well disciplined at home, and they're listening to what we're saying. And the parents were just amazed, because the teachers at the evening schools try really hard to give the kids life skills as well. This is how we interact with people. This is what happens if someone, if you get angry about something, this is how it's appropriate to act, and you listen to your parents and all that. And these two boys took that to heart, and even though they were only there because they had nothing else to do, they were changed. Simply by hearing about Jesus. And the parents were amazed and wanted to know, who are you? And, what have you done with our sons? It's wonderful. This is Lakshmi. And Lakshmi, I think, was also fifth, sixth grade, something like that, I think. But she was a good student. She was smart. She's smart. And she had a plan for her life. And she was like, I'm studying, and I'm going to reach this, and I'm going to get the best grades. And she was going to a tutoring center near her school, because she just wanted all the help she could get, because she was going to get out of her village and do a whole bunch of stuff. And then COVID hit. And then she heard about the evening school, and she was, the evening school are Christians. I can't go there. I'm not going, because she was very strong Hindu. But the more the lockdown went, the longer it went, she began to be afraid of her grades, because they were trying to do an online thing, and she really wanted this extra tutoring. So she gave in and is like, well, I need some help. Maybe someone there at the evening school will help me. And she found out she loved it. The teachers would help her, and then they would feed her, and she would learn about the Bible. And then she was like, this is the best thing ever. And she got all of her friends and come, you have to come to this school, because this is great. And so the one child who had wanted to have nothing to do with Christians came and heard about Jesus and learned about a better education. And she became an advocate for the evening school that she didn't want to attend anyway. And so I liked that story, but because she wanted to do something with her life, and she found the best way to get it done. So Dinesh was somebody who did not like school at all. He didn't want to do it. He was just a troublemaker, and he went to school irregularly before the lockdown. And he just wanted to be on the street and playing with his friends, and that was it. And then the lockdown came, and he got so bored because nobody was doing anything. They couldn't go anywhere, and driving his mom crazy. And so the mother said, you're going to go to this school. And he's like, I'm not going to the school. And she's like, you're going to go to the school? No, I'm not going to do that. Finally, he went. And he sat there like, I'm here because I'm being made to. And it didn't take long until being in the presence of people who loved Jesus broke him down. And he just fell in love with the teacher and the students, and he wanted to be there every day. And so he changed from someone who hated school and wanted to do his own thing to figuring out how the best way is to live. And that's what I love about these stories, is that they see a difference in the people at the evening schools. When teachers who love Jesus are working with children, that's evident. It makes a difference. They see what life with Jesus is like versus what life over here is like. And so now Dinesh is one of those kids like Lakshmi was, who's like, yay, I'm going to go to school. We really like it. And here are two sisters. I have to figure out what I did with their names. Oops, sorry. Oh, here they are. So this is Aswita and, oh, sorry, wrong ones. Gobiga and Kipida, that's it. And they moved to a village, and they moved right before COVID, and then COVID hit. And they had to stay at home, and the mom was really worried that her daughters weren't going to get a good education, which is not weird. It's just a little bit different, because a lot of families are not caring whether girls get education or not, but this family really, really cared. And so the mom heard about this evening school and went and said, can you do anything for my girls? Can I bring them here? And the teacher was like, absolutely, come on in, let's do that. And the teacher spent extra time with the girls because they had missed so much with the lockdown. And the teacher would put in the extra hours and would spend more time with the girls and help them with getting their education. And when they took their end of year exams, the girls just excelled. And the parents were so happy that this teacher would take that time, because they weren't used to that. And we've seen that over and over again, where the teachers really want to invest in the lives of the students. They care. And we heard of a teacher in E-Road who thought that she wasn't doing enough for her pay to only be at the school for 2 hours in the evening. She's like, no, they're paying me too much for this. This is not enough. So she would go house door to door for her students, check on them during the day, see how are you doing, what can I do to help you, and she developed relationships with the families, which led to Bible studies. And because the families were like, we want to know what God you serve, because nobody does that. And so it's really exciting to see all of these, huh? Oh, we're paying her $30 a month, and she thought that she wasn't working enough. Yeah, because she's like, okay, for only 2 hours a night, that's too much money. And so she went out and said, I have to do more for this money. Yeah. And Sudha, I saw her name over here. Okay, Sudha is an 8th grade girl, Hindu, and she started attending the evening schools. And when she started going to the classes, she was decked out in her Hindu dress. And a lot of the girls wear a lot of jewelry depending upon the goddess or the god that they're with. And the teachers welcomed her in, said not a word, just, we know that you're dressing differently, but we're not even going to notice it, make nothing. And it was over time they noticed that Sudha was wearing less and wearing less. And then she stopped the mark on the forehead. And the parents were like, what is happening to our daughter? She's changing right before our eyes. But the daughter was smiling at home now, and she was so helpful. And even though the daughter had made a decision to go in a different direction, the parents were like, we like our daughter. We like this change. And they went to the teacher and said, what are you teaching them? And they're like, we're introducing her to Jesus. That's about all that they were doing. And the parents were so excited because they saw this entire transformation in their daughter, and the happiness and the radiance. And Joe's story was talking about the Holy Spirit, working and shining out. And that's exactly what happened with Sudha. So let me tell you about Sakti. I know I saw his name. My apologies that my notes are so scattered. Sakti had a really bad stuttering problem. And the stuttering problem interfered with his interpersonal relationships because nobody wanted to really sit and talk to him because it would take forever in a conversation. So they made a lot of fun of him. And then he just became like the rowdy kid in the class, in school and whatnot. And he would come to the evening school and he would sit in the back and he would just be angry, and he didn't want this, but he didn't know how to interact with anybody. And so the teachers prayed over him, and God took his stuttering away. And the parents wanted to know what happened to our child. And they were so excited that these teachers would pray over their son and that the God of heaven would take his stuttering away. It was absolutely amazing for them. And now their family's going to church with them because they wanted to be with this God who has the power to cure stuttering. And our teachers took that leap of faith. Like, they prayed over the boy. And that would be, I don't know if I would have done that. We talk in our faith club a lot about healings and whatnot, and it still is a hard concept for me. And I don't know that I would have seen a boy who stutters. I may have sent him to a speech pathologist to help him with that, but I don't know that I would ever walk over and put my hands on him and pray expecting God to heal the boy. And that's what the teachers did at the school. They're like, oh yeah, God can do that. We'll pray for him. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I don't know how many more I have. I'll try and hurry through the stories. This is Swetha and Raj. And they went to a school that was right next to a Hindu temple. And the Hindu temple wanted to shut the school down, but God did not allow that to happen at all because God is more powerful. And the children would go home every night and they would sing the songs that they learned in school, and they would tell the stories that they learned, while they were eating and getting the meals together. And the parents were looking at this and saying, wow, there's such a difference in our kids. They come home happy and they're singing about Jesus. And the school helping the area, the people at the Hindu temple said, okay, we can't fight against this. They're actually helping our people and we're not doing anything. So we're going to leave them alone now because they're producing happy children and they're helping the people. And so these little ambassadors would go home and share with their neighbors all the things that they were learning in school. And that just made a big difference in keeping the school open. And that's what I love that the kids do that. They share a lot. No, I can't find Gopal. He must be on the front page. I lost my notes. My apology. Oh, there we go. Kumar. Uh-oh. I don't know. Oh, there he is. Sorry. My apologies. So this is a story that is about the school in Cauditor. I happen to know that I was at the school there. I was able to visit it twice, which is it's a really good school. And we had a second grade boy, Gopal, and he had a baby sister. And his dad got injured and couldn't work, and the family was pretty much starving. And the mom found out about the evening school feeding children and sent Gopal, and he would get his meal, and she was very happy about that, but they still didn't have food in the house for the rest of the family and the baby. And so the mom would walk Gopal to the school, and many parents do this. They walk their kids to the school, and then they sit outside and they listen to what's going on. And the teachers noticed the mom with the baby, and they were like, well, we can't leave them outside. We have to feed them as well. And so they invited the mom in with the baby and fed them every night as well, so that they could also take some food home to the dad. And the mom was blown away by this. And they're like, who are you to reach out to someone like me and to make sure that I have food? And my baby was enough that you were helping my son, and now you're going the extra mile and helping me. And so she has started Bible studies because she wants to know that God who loves them. And I think because of the time, I'm going to skip to the end. So, children are very important to God, and I love the fact that we have evening schools at Jesus for Asia, through Jesus for Asia. I am so thankful for the dedicated teachers who care about the students more than just the little bit of time that they spend with them in the evening, and that was even shorter during COVID. And I love that the teachers want to be involved with every aspect of the students' lives, and they give them all those pointers about how to live and how to respect and how to learn, and they show them Jesus, and the children are transformed, which then in turn helps transform the parents and the family and then the neighbors, and it just has this huge ripple effect by reaching the children. And this is one promise that I really love, where God has said that the captives of the mighty shall be taken, and the prey of the tyrant will be rescued. And Satan has had such a lock and hold on so many communities around the world. And he has like a tyrant, and he thinks that he's got them in his grasp. But we've seen time and time again that when the Holy Spirit moves and when people are introduced to Jesus, that the people that Satan thinks he has under his hand slip right on out, and they get to be part of God's kingdom, because the one who's doing the contending is Jesus. And his power is up here, and Satan's power is down here. And God is the one who is going to save the children. God cares about the children. And it costs $7 a month to sponsor a child in an evening school, which would give them, now that it's opening up in different places in India, depending upon where they are, they can go back to doing the full 2.5 hours. Others are still limited in what they can do. But $7 a month is not that much for giving them a spiritual education, helping them with their worldly education, and feeding them, and then impacting the families and the communities. And that $7 goes far. Natalie has mentioned this, and she'll mention it again, that on Sabbath, we're going to be taking an offering, and it's going to go for all of the people who are speaking, all the different missionaries. But I'm speaking on Jesus for Asia Evening Schools. Hannah's going to be speaking on Jesus for Asia Bible Workers. And on the slip that you're going to get for your offering, there's a Jesus for Asia line. And if you are interested in helping sponsor a child or even a Bible worker, you can just put evening school or Bible worker on that line, so there's space next to Jesus for Asia. You're not going to see a specific line item for me or for Hannah because we're with Jesus for Asia. I just wanted to let you know that that's an opportunity for you to be able to help. But for $7 a month, it's, not much at all. And so this is a picture. John's in there, all big. We took this at Coditor. The pink that you see, I don't know that you can see pink, but right here is pink. And that's where they had added a bathroom and a kitchen at Coditor. And the blue is just the regular box of the school. And we got to be there for the opening because donors have been gracious to give toward that. And so now they can cook in a kitchen. And I use that term loosely because it's a bench with a hole in it that the bowl goes in, and then the fire is underneath the bench. So they're not out in the open, but the kitchen is not like what you see over in the cafeteria, but at least they have that space, and then they have a squatty potty there that the kids can use because they didn't have one there. And so I just ask that you would pray for the children because they're in situations that they didn't ask to be in. And God loves them, and He is working so hard to rescue the children. And so I thank you for listening about the kids. We love them all. And so you pray, I pray, you pray. Okay, let's bow our heads. Father, I want to thank you for how you work in people's lives and how you reach down and care even about the babies, and how you connect people with the evening schools. And I want to pray for the teachers right now who are giving everything they can in order to reach the children that they have been given charge of. And I thank you for their hearts, and I thank you for the love that you have planted in there, and I thank you for the faith that they have had to be able to stay open even in the midst of COVID, even when there's so many people who are scared, that they stand up and they still share the gospel. And I pray that as we go from here, that the children will stay on our minds and that we'll pray for them. And I can't wait until heaven when we get to meet all the children who are there because we were able to support them. And I want to pray for the food that's over in the cafeteria, and I pray that you will bless those who are working so hard to provide food for us here. And I thank you in Jesus' name, amen.